Dear students of class 8A and 8B, look at the board. Here are some points mentioned. Number 1, rapid spread of Western culture. 2, spread of modern education. 3, Orthodox Hindus and their grievances. Spread of Christianity and policy of racial discrimination. Chapter number 11, topic Revolt of 1857. First point, rapid spread of Western culture. Rapid spread of Western culture. The British from the very beginning determined to introduce modern educative system for the Indian people. The British, for that reason, introduced a number of educative policies. Under the Charter of 1813, a certain amount of money was granted for the spread of education in India through the modern system of education, because the British felt that the Indians were inferior but the Britishers were superior to them. That's why they should be taught good lessons. They should be treated like inferiors. Otherwise, they would never study. They would never show interest to be educated. That's why, in order to make them educated, in order to make them acquainted with British culture, the British left no stone unturned to do it so. That's why, my dear students, the British introduced measures for a number of social reforms. These social reforms, Widow Remarriage Act passed, abolition of Sati also was passed, and the improvement of women's education also was done. They also brought in laws. What thing? They also brought in laws that banned child marriage. But the conservative sections of Indian society, they felt that a foreign government had no right to interfere in or reform the religious and social customs of India. That's why they grew angry, because of the social reforms introduced by the Britishers and the old traditional system which had been practicing by Indian conservative people. Suddenly, these all were declared illegal by the British. And only for that reason, the conservative sections also viewed the works of missionaries like William Carey with suspicion. They believed that the Christian missionaries, in the name of Jesus Christ, were trying to convert the Hindus from the religious concept Hinduism to Christianity. They believed that the social work carried out by the missionaries was actually a means to spread Christianity in India. That's why they all got themselves united against the religious oppression, religious discrimination introduced by the British. And only for that reason, the British decided to introduce modern education among the Indians. The Britishers wanted to communicate a message to the people of India that they were not their enemies, they were their well-wishers, and wanted to introduce modern culture, Western culture, modern education among them, so that they could become, civilized men. Because according to the British, almost all Indians were uncivilized. They used colloquial languages. They knew nothing about English, but only Persian languages. So many people who were working in the Nawabi section and later on came under the administration of the British, whenever the British introduced English as official language, they all left their jobs, because they only knew Persian language but not English. But suddenly, Lord Warren Hastings, came to India as Governor General and he abolished the dual government system and also shifted the treasury from Murshidabad to Calcutta, and also shifted the capital of India from Murshidabad to Calcutta. So Calcutta became the capital of British India, and during that time, the British also decided to introduce modern culture among the Indians. But earlier, that step were taken by the early governor generals from Lord William onwards. The system of removing all kinds of old and traditional views, superstitions, and the introduction of reforms, new reforms were done by Lord Cornwallis. Done by Lord William Bentinck, only because of the contributions of our Indian social reformers like Raja Ram Mohan Roy, Jyotiba Phule, and of course Debendranath Tagore and Prince Dwarkanath Tagore, who were there. They were social workers, social and religious reformers. They encouraged the Britishers to do it so. But ultimately, what happened to the Indians? Spread of modern education became possible ultimately. Why? Because the British were able to motivate the Indians to receive Western education in the interest of themselves, and many of the Indians later realized that it was their mistakes. They did not have any knowledge of English, and Persian language was of no use to them, because the system through the Persian language was not official language like the period of Nawab Nawab. So whenever the British became the ruler of Bengal, ruler of India, they introduced English as official language. Naturally, a section of Indian people felt that English should be learned properly, otherwise they would be unable to be appointed in government jobs. Moreover, the Britishers also offered good jobs for those people who wanted to be educated through English, and as a result, thus it propagated modern education and culture among the Indians. And the educated Indians were offered jobs in the British administration. This was resented by the orthodox section of people because they were not educated. They were actually uncivilized people. Neither they could understand the necessity to be educated through English, or the learning of English should be good for them, nor they could work in the British administration because of their narrow attitude. And this narrow attitude discouraged Orthodox Indian people to allow other Indians to be educated through Western system or Western culture, because they thought that this system was nothing but an attempt against their authority and influence. So Orthodox Hindus regarded British social reforms such as abolition of sati, female infanticide, child marriage, these widow remarriage, discouragement of child marriage, spread of women's education, and breaking up of the age of caste system as an interference in their indigenous and traditions. They were even more alarmed. Why? They were even more alarmed when the women were allowed to be educated and own property. The British supported the conversion of Indians to Christianity. In order to spread Christianity, the British encouraged that group of people who wanted to be Christian by living their Hindu religion, by living the circle of Hinduism. The British decided to offer something for them. What was it? It was conversion of Indians to Christianity as per the legislation passed in the year 1850. That means, as per the legislation passed in 1850, it was decided that those people who converted themselves from Hinduism to Christianity, they would be allowed to inherit ancestral property, but it harmed the sentiments of the religious Orthodox Hindu people, because they thought that they left their religious group and became Christian, and now they would be able to inherit the ancestral property along with other brothers, those who were Hindus. So a Christian member of a family who left their family, who left all relations with their brothers, how is it possible they could inherit ancestral property of their father or grandfather along with other brothers? They were Hindus and they were not Hindus. They became Christian, but it was done only because of to motivate Indians to be Christian more and more in numbers. That's why that act was passed by the British in the year 1850. What is the name of that very act? Legislation Act. Legislation Act passed in order to motivate Indians to be Christians. The policy of racial discrimination. Another one important fact is spread of Christianity. Now, the policy of racial discrimination. Another point, my dear students. The policy of racial discrimination. What is this? The British, introduced the policy of racial discrimination. Why? Because they considered Indians to be inferior and considered themselves to be superior, because a section of Indian people were really uncultured, brute. They did not have any culture. They did not try to follow the system introduced by the British. Why did the British introduce that very system? In order to make them complete men. But they thought that it was nothing but an attempt, a direct attempt to ignore their identities in the society and to discourage them to lead an independent life. The Britishers wanted to restrict their ways. The Britishers wanted to destroy their all hopes. What they had been expecting and enjoying, the Britishers wanted to interrupt that way. That's why there was no social interaction between the British and the Indians. Only that group of Indians who wanted to be educated through Western system of education, only they established cordial relations with the British, but not the traditional Indians or the Orthodox Indians. And Indians were only given minor position in the civil services. It was also a great factor. Some people who received Western education and got a job in civil service, they were given minor positions in the civil services. They were given minor positions in the civil services. Why? How funny is it? I received Western education, you encouraged us, and we received Western education, got service, job in the civil services, but you gave us minor positions. Why? Because we are native people, and gave it to the Britishers, the higher positions. Indians were not allowed to travel in the first class coaches of trains. Why? Because they were blacky native people according to the Britishers. The British used that very language, that you are blacky people of India. You are native people, so you have no right, you did not have access to the first class coach to travel along with the Britishers, but you are allowed to travel with the Brahmins in other coaches reserved for only you. But first class compartments are reserved for only the Britishers, not for you. That's why this meant that the people belonging to the lower caste travel together with the Brahmins in other coaches. How funny. This was considered as an attempt to corrupt Hindu religion. The British didn't care for it, but Indian Orthodox people they felt insulted, and a section of Indian educated people indirectly supported their views, and English became the official language. As English became the official language, as I told you earlier, and Persian was sidelined. That's why it resulted in many Indians losing their jobs. But ultimately what happened? Ultimately, those group of people who received Western education and the knowledge of English, that very English educated Indians, they were offered jobs. They received knowledge of English and offered jobs, but still they were less paid than the Europeans or the Britishers. So the centuries old caste system was threatened when the British brought in the core concept of equality before law. The British learned the Indians that they favored the concept of equality before law, but they themselves broke that system. There was no equality between the Hindus and the Britishers, between the Indians and the Britishers. There was no equality. They did not care for it. That's why both the Hindus and Muslims joined hands together in the interest of themselves. They did not want to be insulted at the hands of the Britishers, since it belonged to their own country. Both the Hindus and Muslims joined hands together. The introduction of modern technology and transport, telegraph, railways, etc. aroused fear and suspicion among the Indians. Why? Because they thought that it was nothing but an attempt to harm the sentiments of the Indians, because telegraph poles which were installed, they thought that from the telegraph pole almost all Indians who were antagonizing the Britishers, they would be hanged as punishment, and the British punished them by that way. That's why they were installing a number of poles. But why was it being installed? Why was it being constructed beside the two sides of the road? They did not have any knowledge. Whenever the railway tracks were started setting up, they did not have any knowledge what they were going to do, what was to be done. But later on, that orthodox group of people felt that what was going on doing by the Britishers, that would help them in the long run, and they would be benefited along with the Britishers. Up to this, my dear students, next day other points. Thank you.